Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Teresa Castro, and I'm a proud alumna and staff member in UNC's Office of Alumni Relations. Thank you all for joining us today for the Alumni Career Panel, Alumni in Global Careers. Today, we will learn from and connect with fellow UNC Bears working in this industry. Before I introduce you to our panelists, I wanted to share a couple housekeeping items. First, this event will be recorded and will be available on demand a week after the event on our alumni website. I will post the link in the chat. And two, I invite you all to start building your network and reach out to our panelists after this event. I will also post your contact information in the chat towards the end of this virtual event. As we highlight the careers of these alumni, I invite students, fellow staff, and faculty to ask questions via the Q&A feature. Now, please help me welcome our panelists. Panelists, please introduce yourself by stating your name, your pronouns, title, the organization that you work for, your UNC degree, and a little bit about yourself. And Rob, we'll start with you.
Thank you. My name is Rob Grant. Nice to meet you. Go Bears. He, him, his. I graduated in 1983. Proud Bear. Still continue to go visit Greeley on a regular basis. I got my degree in organizational communications and sociology. I still live in the Denver area. I live in Southwest Littleton. So I work in the technology space. So I'm vice president of technology right now for a company called Pursuit Collection. We're in the hospitality space, so we own a lot of hotels, restaurants, and attractions across the world, primarily a lot of them in Alaska, Canada, Costa Rica, and Iceland. But throughout my career, I've got a lot of global experience in different technology roles. I'd love to share some things with you.
Thank you, Rob. And Luke, how about we go to you next?
Sure. Well, my name is Luke. I graduated from UNC in 2016. Go Bears. Family's still in Colorado, so try to get home as often as I can. I'm living with my in-laws right now, celebrating the Chinese New Year. I live in China. It's about 7 a.m. here. I've been living abroad for the last 10 years. I currently work at a private bilingual school in Dongguan. It's about 45 minutes west of Hong Kong. And I love my life. UNC prepared me well for a teaching career, and I've been a teacher for a decade. I love the experience, and am happy to share my experiences so I can get more bears out here as well.
Thank you, Luke. And Eduardo, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eduardo Maya. I graduated from UNC in 2020 with my bachelor's of anthropology. I currently live just outside of DC. I'm an intelligence analyst with the Washington, DC Homeland Security and Emergency Management Agency. I know it's quite a mouthful, so you might hear me refer to it as HCMA moving forward. And before that, I served in a very similar position for working for the state of Colorado, specifically under the Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. So looking forward to talking to you all about my experience, maybe a little bit non-traditional uh, from my degree in anthropology to what I'm doing now and sort of those experiences that I was able to gather along the way and maybe, provide some insight for you all. So I'm very glad to be here.
Thank you, Eduardo. And Brent, why don't you close us out?
Thank you, Teresa. My name is Brent Much, and I had the pleasure of completing my doctorate in educational leadership and policy studies at UNC in 1997. I really came to UNC kind of later in my career. I was superintendent of the Welldari 8 School District, which is located in Fort Lupton, so just south of Greeley, and I had moved to Colorado from Iowa, where I was actually working on a doctorate at a university in Iowa. So I had the pleasure of coming to Greeley and had a wonderful, wonderful experience concluding my degree program before leaving Colorado and moving overseas. And I spent 23 years in international education, leading a number of schools, which I'll talk a little bit more about throughout the course of our presentation today. But it's great to be back and great to be connected once again with UNC. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all. And now we can jump right in. And again, I invite guests who are watching, if you want to ask questions via the Q&A feature at any point, please feel free to do that. So our first question, how did your experience at UNC help prepare you for a career with an international or global component? And were there particular courses, experiences, or people that influenced that direction? Rob.
Sure, thank you. So first, I would say I grew up on a farm in Keensburg, Colorado. So I came to Greeley, the big city of Greeley, to go to college. Didn't really know anybody when I got there, but I think one of the big things in Greeley is I was curious, right? So that's my Ted Lassoism. Be curious. It's always been an opportunity to explore and try new things in a safe environment. And so first of all, from a class perspective, like I said, I was organizational communications and sociology. So some of the things I learned were how to influence, how communication can flow through an organization. You learn how to talk to people, how to listen to people, and how to have good written communication, good spoken communication, how to present, because all of those, no matter what your job is, those are things that you have to be able to do well in order to be effective. So I think through the classes, that was important. I will honestly say that I learned more being involved in some of the extracurricular activities at UNC. So I was on the University Program Council and ran the concert committee for 2 years. I was on student government, student fee allocation committee, and I was an RA for a year. And in all those roles, I had the opportunity to talk to people from different diverse cultures, whether it was on campus or at other schools and other areas. I learned how to deal with people who maybe didn't have the same beliefs that I did. I learned how to deal with people who were happy. I learned how to deal with people who were drunk, people who were angry. So just in situations where you learn how to deal with a lot of different people, and it doesn't. So from a global perspective, it doesn't sound very applicable, but when you're working with people globally from different cultures and backgrounds, you have to be curious and you have to be respectful and you have to listen and understand where they're coming from so that you can be influential and help them achieve what they want. So I think that's my education in Greeley and at UNC. I think those were the key things for me. I got involved a lot, and it really helped me broaden my my background.
Thank you so much, Rob. I always tell students to step outside of their comfort zone and get involved. I think that's where you do the most learning and growing. Luke.
Yeah, I'll echo Rob a little bit. The extracurricular activities, the clubs and stuff. I think I was part of APAS, which is the Asian Pacific American Student Services Club, and that was extremely eye-opening. It was great to meet people from a bunch of different cultures and languages and see how they all fuse together. I was in the Mandarin Chinese program, and so I earned my minor degree in Mandarin Chinese. I think that was really, really helpful. Now, you don't need to speak a foreign language to go abroad. And I think 90% of the expatriates that I've worked with in China, especially, don't speak Chinese. But how amazing it was to have that skill living in this culture and this society, being able to communicate with people on the daily and learn so much more and learn the culture so much more quickly. I think that UNC was really, really, really important in helping me build those skills, especially my professors. So Dr. Low and Dr. Fong were part of my history and Chinese Mandarin programs, and they were really the ones who were able to push me into learning the language and experiencing the culture. And more than anything, I think it was the study abroad programs. The study abroad was really helpful into pushing me out of my comfort zone. Born in Greeley, kind of similar background, native from Colorado, and I remember, talking to my father. I said, "Oh, I'm not sure if I want to go. It's a few months, it's my whole summer." And then I went, and now look at me, 10 years later, I've been living in China. So it's really important to take advantage of those opportunities, and UNC was really helpful in helping me find those.
Thank you, Luke. That's a good story. Eduardo.
Yeah, so I think same experience as Rob, really. So I'm originally from Garden City, Kansas, kind of a super small town in the middle of nowhere. So moving to Greeley was actually a step up for me. And I think even though I wasn't really expecting to go, an international route from the get-go, I think just my major in anthropology really did prepare me in that way. uh, of course, just by its very nature, right? And some of the courses that I took in cultural anthropology and in archaeology, helping me understand the way different cultures interact, their practices, languages, perspectives, uh, things of that nature. That was always something that even today, right, when I don't even do anything related to anthropology, that I really feel like informs the foundation of the way that I approach communication with individuals that I might not be too familiar with. But also when I was there at UNC, I was in the Ronald E. McNair Postbaccalaureate Achievement Program, which was again a really great opportunity because that provided me in an area where I was able to get to know a lot of different students there at UNC that were in different degree fields from I. And because of that, again, being able to understand their perspectives, seeing, how that could inform the way that I'm looking uh, at different problems and being able to take other things into consideration, again, in a professional environment, nonetheless. And then on top of that, really just even if I didn't know the direction that I was really heading in, just the constant support, not only from the entire anthropology department as a whole, but to those specifically that I considered my mentors with Dr. Kyle and Dr. Hamilton. So I really owe a lot to them and just their constant support in really helping me go in whatever direction I felt like was best for me.
Thank you, Eduardo. And Brent.
I came to UNC at a different juncture in my life's journey, both personally and professionally. I was the superintendent of the Weld RE8 school district when I came to UNC to work on my doctorate. And to be honest with you, I had phenomenal faculty to work with. As I really thought about where do I want to direct my research and what do I want to study, I was extremely interested in taking a look at whether the skill set that superintendents in the state of Colorado needed to be successful were different from one funding category than another, because the state legislature had established 7 different funding categories for school districts across the state. Then, completely unanticipated, in 1994, I moved to Saudi Arabia. You don't conduct a study of school districts in the state of Colorado from Saudi Arabia. And so I sat down with my research advisor, Dr. Barnett, Bruce Barnett, who was just absolutely phenomenal, and said, "Where do I go from here?" And he said, "Well, delve into literature. Let's begin to take a look at what's been done in the international school environment to look at what are the skills and dispositions and and abilities that superintendents need to have to be successful in an international setting." So, kind of midway through my doctorate, I completely changed changed horses and started to really look at this through a completely different lens. And I think it reflected a number of things. I think it reflected UNC's flexibility and their capacity for working with graduate students to really focus on a topic that was going to be meaningful and relevant to them. And I discovered in my research and review of the literature that very little had been done to take a look at the skill set of successful superintendents in the international school community. And so, with the support of, basically my entire doctoral dissertation committee, I was able to really reposition the study and do some things that added significant level of value back into the international school community over a period of time. So I am indebted in so many different ways to UNC and for their flexibility and commitment and dedication and professionalism to the journey that I was on, personally and professionally.
Thank you so much, Brent. Definitely a unique experience to the rest of the panelists. So I appreciate that perspective. Alrighty, our next question is, a global career can look very different depending on the field. How does your work connect to international communities, cultures, or organizations on a day-to-day basis? Luke.
Yeah, so I'm in a unique situation where I live in a different culture, and so we just waking up and stepping foot outside the door is can be a unique experience some days. But more importantly, I'll talk about working at an international school because when you work at an international school, you're meeting many different international faculty. So although I live in China, I'm meeting and I work with people from all over the world, Brazilian and Spanish soccer coaches, British, Scottish colleagues that teach English in my department, you name it, Russian, Ukrainian violinists working together in the school orchestra. It's amazing what kind of cultural community we have just at our school alone. Stepping outside though into the world, there's of course many different kind of uh, cultural experiences from the day to day. And my work connects us with, there's, the Department of Culture that likes to share kind of Chinese culture with international faculty. So they'll come to our school and we'll do calligraphy or we'll cut the paper. What is that called? The laliar, the kind of things for New
Right.
Year decorations, Chinese New Year decorations. So
Origami.
those are, yes, like origami, right? It's really fun experiences, and I love living abroad. So that's probably the biggest thing that working abroad can do for you, open your eyes a little bit to different cultures.
Oh, definitely. I can only imagine. Eduardo.
Yeah, so might be a little bit different for me compared to the rest of the crowd, given that my job primarily is in the realm of public safety as a whole, but a lot of the time has a lot to do with counterterrorism. So that question for me is a little bit twofold, and I think it's those that I work with and those that we serve and protect day in, day out, right? So because of the nature of the work, threats don't stop to public safety, to the citizens of the United States, whether they're emerging from here, domestically or from halfway across the world. And because of that, on a daily basis, we engage with a lot of different agencies, primarily in the United States, but uh, in times, it's who are which organizations are we reaching out? Is it the State Department who has uh, protectees abroad, right? In the work that we're engaging with them, maybe they have inquiries that they're sending over to us, or other law enforcement agencies like Interpol, and that also comes down to the information that we're ingesting day in day out, where we know that the threat environment in the United States can be shaped a lot of the time by what's happening internationally. So we have to be constantly consuming this information, being aware of what's going on, and what our partners are doing across the world. But at the same time, right, coming back to the aspect of the citizens that we work to serve and protect, they, especially in DC, and I mean even in Colorado, right, it come from increasingly diverse communities, and they all face different challenges depending on what could be going on, for example, in their country of origin, whether that's how that impacts them here domestically, and the challenges that they're going to face. So that's a big part of it, right? Being always abreast of who's the vulnerable populations that we need to be aware of, and the threats that they're facing, so we can do our very best to protect them, and ensure their safety in whatever way possible.
Thank you, Eduardo. Brent.
How does your work connect you to international communities, cultures, or organizations on a day-to-day basis? I find myself thinking about two things, and Luke has really spoken to one of them already. about being immersed in a culture that's so different than ours. And when you live outside of the U.S. and you live, in another setting, you are daily, I think, sometimes confronted with the challenges that accompany that opportunity, but also you are blessed to have the opportunity to be immersed in a culture that often is so different from the cultural experience that I had growing up in America. And so it serves to, I think, enrich our lives. It serves, I think, to help us see the world through a broader lens. It quite frankly, it forced me to confront my prejudices and my biases, some of which I didn't even know existed until I moved overseas and started living in far more diverse communities than I had ever experienced previously. But I would also say there's something very unique, specific for educators working in an international school environment. Many schools, as Luke would know, have different personas and different personalities. But it's been my experience that so often what happens is that international schools become the epicenter for the community. And if you have a particularly large expat population, and that expat population may in fact be very, very diverse. It may be 50, 60, 70 different nationalities represented in your student body. But the school ends up being the place where parents, children come together, develop relationships, are on their own individual learning journeys. Panelists have talked about the power of their extracurricular experiences at UNC. That's true in the life of K to 12 schools all the time as well. And so you see students who are on debate, you see students who are in the musicals, you see students who are on athletic teams, and the community comes out to support those events, and it ends up really bringing the community together. So it's been my experience that kind of over the 23 years that I lived abroad, I really experienced community in an unbelievably positive and just an amazing experience. I mean, I felt like I had worked in schools that had the support of the communities in the US, but there's something unique about living overseas that the schools become that glue that brings and holds the community together in some very unique and special ways.
Thank you, Brent. There is nothing like community. I agree with you. And Rob.
Yeah, so I think my experience is a little bit different. So I've never lived outside of the U.S. I've never lived in a foreign country. But when the day I graduated from UNC, I was talking with the father of a friend of mine. We were sitting at a bar. You guys are too young to remember. It was called the State Armory. And he told me, he said, if I can give you one piece of advice when you graduate, either find a job that you love and you can live anywhere and do that job, or find a place that you want to live and you can do anything as long as you live in that place. You can work to make money, but as long as you live there, you're happy. Because most people either live someplace that's okay and have a job that's okay, but they don't have anything that they're passionate about. So be passionate about one of those things. I got out of college. I probably had 7 or 8 jobs the first 10 years out of college. And my career really started when I turned 35. So I didn't know what I wanted to do when I came out. I'm sure there's a lot of you that you're not sure, you're afraid, you got this degree, and you say, well, what is it? What am I going to do? That was me. I worked at a tire store. I sold mortgages. I sold computers. I bartended a lot. I sold gambling information. I did all sorts of things just to make money. But finally, when I was 35, I moved back to Colorado. I was to that place that I wanted to be, and I started my career. And so in my career, I worked at gold mining companies. I worked at software companies. I worked at Crocs, the rubber shoe company. I've worked at lumber companies, and currently I work at a hospitality company. And so the countries internationally that I've been able to visit, I've been blessed. All the way Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Singapore, China, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Africa, Antarctica, in Europe, the UK, France, Germany, um, Alaska, South America, Brazil, Argentina, and all of these, because my company had business there, I was able to go visit these places and work with people that were part of my team or part of the company. Um, so I guess what I would say is it's not necessarily the job that's an international job. It's the company that does international business, and you're fortunate enough to be in a job that's able to leverage your skills to go and be international in your job. I would say that you can be in person, virtual, but to be effective, you have to really be able to talk and then sometimes be in person. I had to when I was going to Asia. I was smart enough to research the cultures before I went to Japan, before I went to China, before I went to Singapore. I did research to understand just the basics. How do you talk? How do you greet each other? How do you shake hands? How do you tip or not tip at a restaurant? How do you take a business card? How do you receive a business card? If doing research up front, then you go in and you don't look like that dumb American who comes in and tries to push your American culture on people in international places. So I think doing a little research and then asking questions, understanding and respecting things like time zones, like language differences. I had a global team every job I've had the past 30 years. And usually, if you're an American company, you have a meeting between 9 to 5. And so that means someone like Luke has to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning to attend a meeting that's in the middle of my business day. And from a respect perspective, you kind of learn, well, sometimes it's okay for me to get up early or me to stay up late at night so we can have a meeting during their time. So again, it's understanding their cultures and what the differences are. And so I think that in my business, in my world, that's been very effective for me. So I guess that's how I think it applies in my role.
No, thank you, Rob. I appreciate that perspective. Next question. Working across cultures often requires flexibility. Can you share a time you experienced culture shock or had to adapt your communication style in another cultural or professional environment? Eduardo.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'll use my experience where I actually had the opportunity to move and live in the capital of Bulgaria, which is Sofia, for 6 months while I did an internship at the NATO Center of Excellence there. And I don't think there's, for me personally, a greater example of culture shock than getting off a plane after 13 hours in an Eastern European country where you don't know the language at face value. If you've ever seen Bulgarian, the way it's written, it looks on face value like Russian. So very different there, and learning, from the get-go. Okay, I'm on my own here. How am I gonna maneuver, right? Whether it's very quickly adapting to trying to determine, hey, do you speak English? No. Okay, so what do I need to do here, right? Do we need to translate some things? Is there a colleague nearby that might be able to be of some assistance? So that was just kind of straight from the get-go, right? Luckily for me, I had been trying to learn Russian for some time there, so at least I was able to read. I was able to comprehend the alphabet and could kind of sound things out a little bit. So that definitely did play in my advantage. But there at the Center of Excellence where I was working, there was representative from about 6 Eastern European countries there, all with, of course, different cultures, different perspectives, but nonetheless, they're serving to fulfill the same mission. And there, I was only one of a very few individuals that were there in a civilian position. So now we have people from all across Eastern Europe, right, that are primarily hold positions in the military of their local countries, and really trying to bridge that dynamic, right? It's like, how can we best communicate, because they're all very professional and knowledgeable about the work that they're doing, but nonetheless, because of the international environment that we're in, English was the language that was spoken there. So that did help me a little bit, but being of course being patient and knowing that maybe you have to phrase things in different ways, right? To try to get the point across, or ask them to ask questions in a different way, and just uh, working through the process again. Maybe if you're asking for help, but also being open to be leveraged, as a resource in that way, right? It's like, how can I assist you, because I know that English isn't your first language, but nonetheless your work is. So how can I be a tool for that? So I think that's again the greatest culture shock that I had in my life, really. But then that opened up a really good opportunity where me and a buddy of mine took advantage of it, and then did actually a 2 month trip where we traveled across Europe, visited about 16 different countries. And if there's anything that I have to say from that entire experience, is be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Don't be afraid to to take that leap and do these things that, yes, they're going to be a little bit scary. I'm obviously not saying please don't put yourself in harm's way, but be willing to do these things, to kind of to push the boundary a little bit, because I think you'll find very quickly that there's a lot of great people in this world, and that live all across the world, that you want to meet, build friendships and bonds with, that you can then refer back to in the future.
Thank you, Eduardo. I appreciate that. Brent.
I find myself, Teresa, thinking about two things. Number one, and I would say to those that might be joining us today who are of Muslim faith, I would say Ramadan Kareem, because as we start the holy month of Ramadan across the Muslim world, probably my first Ramadan experience in Saudi Arabia. I moved to Saudi Arabia in 1994, and I lived there until 2007. And so I lived in Saudi for 13 years. And the holy month of Ramadan was for me an experience to learn a great deal more about the nature of the Muslim faith and the commitment that so many Muslims brought to fasting during the holy month of Ramadan, and the impact that had on their lives, both personally and the impact that it had in the life of our schools professionally. To be cognizant of the fact that we had students who were fasting. We had students of Muslim faith in our international schools, many of whom were Americans. We had a significant number. I think in the years that I was at the American School of Dubai, 30% of our students who attended the school that were, I mean, I think close to 80% of our students were, excuse me, 30% of our students were a Muslim faith, and so being cognizant of the fact that many of them were fasting from sunrise to sunset, and to be aware of that and to adapt was probably my first experience. The other thing I recall so vividly going to Saudi Arabia in 1994, as an American, I'm used to going into meetings and getting right to the subject at hand. What's the purpose of the meeting? Why are we there? What is it that we need to talk about? Let's get our work done and let's move on. And I think that Rob made reference to this, in terms of understanding the cultural nuances. In Saudi Arabia, you do not get to the task at hand. You generally have tea. You may also enjoy dates, eat dates and drink tea and talk with the person. If I were in Riyadh talking to someone at whether it be the Ministry of Education or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs around a visa approval that we needed to bring expat teachers in to work in our schools, I may have gone there with a specific objective to see if I could get X number of visas approved, but you took the time before you even asked if that could occur, to ensure that you had the opportunity to talk about family and to ask about family and how they were. And so I think those cultural understandings are just not only absolutely critical to being able to experience success and to build relationships, but I think they're opportunities to further develop your own understanding and insights of ways in which we are different and ways in which we are nonetheless very much the same.
Yes, I agree with you, Brent. Thank you. And Rob.
Yeah, real quick. So I've had a lot of various travel experiences, but I guess the culture shock was the first time I went to the Pacific Rim, and that's where I learned pretty quickly that I needed to do my research before I got there, because when you travel or work internationally, the worst thing you can do is assume. And so my trip was to go to Japan, Hong Kong, China, and Singapore. And I made the assumption that everybody in Asia got along. They're part of the country, and so they all loved and worked together, and it was great. Without understanding the culture, right? Singapore and Japan didn't get along; they were at war. So I think that don't assume. Be willing to try new things, because that's very important. And things like food and drink, right? You need to make sure that in their cultures, food and drink in some cultures is a sign of respect. And so if someone offers you a drink, alcohol, and if you say no, that's very disrespectful to them as a human being. Or like I said earlier, how you give and receive a business card. Back in the day when you had business cards, if someone handed you a business card and I just took it and put it in my pocket, in some Asian cultures, that's incredibly disrespectful, because they want you to take it with both hands, look at it, and set it on the table and treat it with respect. So those cultural things were very important. Brent talked about how business is done. In some places, you need to understand that you go into a meeting and you talk about everything up to making a decision, and realizing that in Japan, decisions are made after the meeting at the bar. So if you don't understand that and you're trying to push to a decision in the meeting, again, you're being very disrespectful. So I think just being open and listening and understanding and not assuming anything. I think that those are the things that really hit me.
Thank you, Rob. And Luke. You're muted.
Sorry. I have a dog here, so she keeps barking, so I got to put it on mute every once in a while. I have a long list of culture shock that I could go in depth into, but maybe one that I'll give that's a little bit more professional. In meetings, I think that we are very kind of open-minded in the U.S. and everybody has a right to their opinion, and we all kind of want to discuss these things. But in China, that's not the case. In China, you sit and you listen, and then once the meeting is over, if you have any kind of thing that you want to add, you will find your leader afterwards and kind of quietly let them know your opinion, and then the decision is made later, and they'll acknowledge you for it, and they'll say, hey, we noticed that Luke had this great idea last time after our meeting, and then they'll kind of change it up. So that was a big culture shock at the very beginning, and I think that even a lot of teachers, they come in and we'll have the meeting and they'll say, hey, we're going to have our PE field day, and it's going to be this day, and some teachers will just hype right up and say, hey, but that's not a good day to do it. So there is this big culture shock that happens day to day. Another thing is even just going back to the US, I think you get a culture shock after living abroad for so long. I remember walking the aisles of the supermarket, and I was in the grocery store, King Soopers, and there was an entire aisle of sugary breakfast cereals. And I thought, wow, that is amazing. There's a whole aisle, and they're all different. Look, and there's so many different, and that's something that I'd grown up with. But after living outside of that for so long, you kind of experience what's called reverse culture shock. And so yeah, you have to kind of adapt your mindset not only for things that happen outside of the U.S., but also when you go back and you see how things are different back home.
Thank you so much, Luke. Our next question is, what experiences should students pursue while still in college if they want to prepare for a global career? And more specifically for Eduardo and Rob, were there any opportunities that led to your specific job that students might not be thinking about? And Brent.
I found myself thinking, about that question through a lens of saying, if you're thinking right now about some global opportunity, take advantage of every single opportunity you can think of to expand, as Rob has already said, your own understanding and your own insights into what might be different about other places. I think to the extent that you have an opportunity to do any kind of study abroad opportunities, you should seize every one of those that you can. I think you should look for those opportunities to travel. I know that the international, UNC has an international group of students that are on the campus. Get to know them, build relationships with them, find out in what way or ways, their growing up has been like your experience and different from your experience. Kind of connect with those students that are on the UNC campus to learn more about what they can share and what they can provide. And then the other thing I find myself thinking about is read, read. I mean, just take advantage of every single opportunity that there may be. Because for any of a number of us, I did not travel extensively before I moved abroad. I'll be very candid with you about that. But I had, Rob's talked about the importance of curiosity and having a growth mindset and being interested in learning. And so I would encourage you just to look at those opportunities that allow you just to expand your own understanding in whatever ways you can.
Thank you, Brent. Rob.
Yeah, if I were to give someone advice now, I would say um, prepare yourself by getting at least a business minor. It doesn't matter what your major is, get a business minor and learn a language. I would recommend Mandarin or Spanish. But if you know a language and you have business expertise, you can get a lot of jobs with a lot of companies where you can use transposable skills and learn things to work internationally. If I were to think back, I wish I'd have taken I didn't learn any languages in school. I wished I'd have done that. So that would really be my recommendation. And study abroad, read, just like Brent said, um, and and yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you, Rob. Luke.
Yeah, so I've mentioned this before, the study abroad programs, definitely, joining those student union, student clubs, and then of course language learning. Being bilingual is a blessing. It is one of the most amazing things. It's really opened my eyes to the world, and I would encourage everyone to learn, if not just one, another three languages, four languages. Um, Spend this time that you can while you're at university to be practicing and studying a language 100%. That is going to be the best way to prepare you for a global career. It's true nowadays that there are applications and even earphones that will do live translation. But understanding the language in context is so much more empowering. Knowing exactly how something translates is incredibly eye-opening, and understanding the perspective that language provides is fruitful. Use the time that you're studying to practice a language, even if you don't speak it very well. When I first graduated UNC, Wo Shuo Zhejiang, my Chinese just wasn't very good. 但是10年以后，我的中文已经完美了，没有问题. So you could see the difference between, when I had first left and then now is wild. And so you can kind of pick things up as you go, but going abroad with a foundation will really set you up for success.
Thank you, Luke. You're inspiring me. I want to learn Mandarin now. Thank you. And Eduardo.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will 100% second that. I mentioned before I went to Bulgaria, I was trying to learn a little bit of Russian, and in hindsight, I really do wish that I would have put a lot more effort into that because it really would have helped me in the long run. I joke sometimes that by the time I left Bulgaria, I could say, "Do you speak English?" and "Do you speak English?" and I don't speak Bulgarian. Like that was about the the amount of Bulgarian that I could speak. In a very, they would tell me I would say those two things very fluently, and you would think I spoke Bulgarian, but nonetheless, yeah, I do really wish that I would have committed to that. Something that even nowadays I still think about all the time because I haven't necessarily still even had the opportunity, to really put that time in to commit to it. So I do think about all the time. I would say, if you can, if you're thinking about it now, please do commit. Right? Don't have it where it's like me, where you're thinking about it, and then you put it off, and then you could have used it, and then after that, well, you kind of don't have the use for it, so you continue to put it off. I really wish that just from the get-go, I just would have committed to it. And I think when it comes to all the different opportunities that we're talking about, I'd say absolutely, if as many as you can. The other one that I will add to that is work study programs. If there's anything like that that you can, get in touch with in whatever program you're doing. I was fortunate enough to connect with a professor of mine when I was at the University of Denver, where I was able to have a work study position for him at the Center for China-U.S. Cooperation, and he also oversees the Journal of Contemporary China. So not only was I able to continue to build that subject matter expertise, but then also being able to host these events with scholars from around the world. And as that side of the editorial assistant part of that further journal, communicate and be in contact with scholars and subject matter experts from across the world, right? And being able to help them fine tune their submissions to make sure that they were meeting our own standards, and of course they're being cognizant of things such as time differences, the way that they might be phrasing something, because of differences in language, it might not mean what you think it does. So being able to have those conversations, like hey, I do understand where you're going with this, but this might not be how the average English reader interprets this. So being able to have those conversations and really work out those nuances. That was a really great opportunity.
Thank you, Eduardo. Our next question is many international jobs aren't posted in obvious places. So how did networking, mentorship, or professional connections help you access global opportunities? And Rob.
So I'd start out by saying that every job that I've got in my career, I've got through networking. I've never gotten a job applying online and trying to go through that process. It's always been through a network connection. A lot of them have been UNC, people that I knew from UNC. So I think someone said before, build your network, whether it's LinkedIn or whatever, build your network and continue to just evolve it. And I would say, rather than looking for positions, because you're right, they're underground, I say you look for companies that have an international presence. And what I say by presence, right, do they have business offices in other countries or manufacturing in other countries or stores? Because even though they may be a US based company, they still manage things centrally. And so they want people that are US based to go and help manage these locations. So um, don't look for an international job, look for a company, and the roles in the company will have international responsibilities, if that makes sense. So.
I think that's a good perspective, Rob. Thank you. Luke.
So my very first job in China was actually networked through the professor at UNC. So we had a visiting professor from Hebei Shizhuang, and she said, "Hey, after you graduate, how about you could come in and work for my university?" And so that was really great. That was a really good foot into the door. For students who are looking to teach abroad, 10 years ago, maybe it was really easy to just find something online. But I would say do your diligence and most importantly, work through a recruiter. Find someone who will help uh, know exactly what you're looking for, or go through a platform like Search Associates, where you upload your information, your resume, and then schools can find you that way. That would definitely be the way that I would approach looking at teaching abroad at this day and age. Um, don't just trust any job that you find on Google. A quick Google search, teach English in China. There will be a lot of different, not just scams. I won't say that word, but jobs that you'll get into and you'll be involved in, and you'll say, "This is not what I expected." So going through a recruiter or going through a platform, even LinkedIn is fine. Going to those schools directly or finding jobs that are posted, usually by recruiters or services like that, are great ways that will help you connect to those teaching jobs.
Thank you, Luke. Eduardo.
Yeah, so I think my perspective here is twofold, but it definitely revolves around the realm of mentorship because the mentors that I've been fortunate enough to have in my life are really those that have helped me propel myself to where I am today. So, first, on the front of if you're looking to continue your education, whether it was my one of my mentors in community college that even had helped me apply to get into UNC, right? To my mentors there at UNC that helped me sort of define my interest, helped me with applications to graduate programs, and were there to support me in whatever way they could, right? They helped me in a lot of applications for programs in anthropology. But when I was like, hey, there's this really interesting program that I want to do in international security, and maybe that's the way that I think I want to go, they were there to be supportive of me and help me in whatever way possible. And I know you probably hear it all the time, but these professors and these professionals that are in your life and that you interact with daily in your courses or that you might see around campus, they truly do want to help you. They want to do whatever they can for you. They want to help you succeed. And really, a lot of the time, just don't be afraid to ask, right? That a lot of them do find comfort in their own lives being able to help students, right? They're in these positions for a reason. They're here to support us. And on the other side of that has to do with my experiences with internships specifically, right? When it came to these mentors that I had that were able to make these recommendations, whether it's, talking about your interests and say, hey, I know somebody who does something like that that you might be interested in working for, right? So putting that in contact, or even again being able to support you when it comes to applications for these international internships, how you can leverage them in those ways again, because they're willing to help, they want to help you. A lot of them feel like that's part of their purpose in their career. And again, in my life, they've played a very important role that I'm appreciative for every single day.
Thank you, Eduardo and Brent.
Teresa, very quickly, I want to build on what Luke has already shared, and I want to speak
Sure.
specifically to any UNC students who might be thinking about potentially a teaching or an administrative career within the international school community. As Luke has already said, there are a number of organizations that have a prominent footprint across the international school community. These are organizations. I happen to work for one of them. It's Search Associates, but it's not the only one. And I think both Luke and I would be in agreement that we would want to ensure that any UNC student who was interested was getting good guidance and counsel as it relates to how to access the pathways that will give you opportunities into those international school opportunities that are going to be professional, that are going to be exemplary, and are going to give you an opportunity to be challenged and to grow both personally and professionally. So take advantage of our connectivity through LinkedIn, and let me just leave it at that.
Yes, please do not hesitate to reach out to our panelists. We are going to jump into our final question of the evening. And I think you all have done a great job at providing advice to our students. But for the last time, what is one final piece of advice that you would give to a UNC student who wants a global career but maybe doesn't feel qualified or confident enough to pursue one? And Eduardo.
Yeah, so I think whether it's pursuing a global career or any sort of other opportunity with that same focus, uh, know that they know that you're going to come into these positions with the experience that you do have, and you're going to grow into someone that's going to do great things there, right? They're not expecting you to come in and just be absolutely perfect. They're seeing the skills that you have, and they're seeing how is that applicable to the work that they can do, and how they can build on what you already can provide. So I think it's very natural to, to not feel confident or feel like you don't belong in that space, but you truly do, right? You're pursuing these career paths. You've shown that you're a dedicated individual, and just be willing to take that leap. Don't feel like you have to be perfect, and consider these. There's throughout your career. I'll say this with the whole 2.5 years of professional work under my belt, so some of my colleagues could speak about this a little bit more, is that in your life there's going to be various stepping stones, right? Whether this is an entry level position for you, that's going to propel you into what you're doing in the future, whether that's with another company in a different position with that same organization. So again, just please be able to take that leap. You do belong, and I think it'll be, once you get in these areas, they're a lot less scary than they really seem. And you'll really quickly find out that there's a lot of people that were in your same shoes once upon a time that you're probably going to look up to and be like, wow, I want to be like that person when I'm 10, 15 years down the line.
Thank you, Eduardo. Brent.
I didn't feel qualified nor competent when I started on this journey X number of years ago. And I will just say the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single footstep. I think Eduardo said it best. You're going to be surrounded by people who are dedicated to helping you grow and helping you to learn and helping you to, find your way. And I think Rob offered some great advice that I would just build on in concluding my comments, is that, I on occasion will say to people, I don't feel like I went to work a day in my life because I pursued a career that I had great passion and great interest. And it has richly blessed me. It's taken me literally all over the world, and it's given me opportunities that I could never, ever have imagined possible. But I was in the presence of people who were more than willing to offer guidance and counsel and help and assistance. And you're going to find that. You're going to find that. So step out, pursue your dreams with passion, with dedication, and you'll be, I think, pleasantly surprised to find that there'll be no shortage of help for you along the way.
Thank you, Brent. Very well said. Rob.
I guess the one piece of advice I would give is check your ego at the door. You need to be willing to go into a company or a role and not say, I have to have this job and I have to be making this amount of money. Sometimes you need to get your foot in the door with a company, and you need to take a role that may not be ideally what you want, but you can work your way towards that. So be flexible, don't be egotistical, and in every role you're in, make sure you learn transferable skills that you can bring to the next job.
Thank you, Rob. And Luke.
I would say go and make a friend with the many international students that we have at UNC. I made lifelong friendships with several international students And if you don't feel like you're ready for a global experience, they probably aren't either. And so talking with them and sharing those experiences, and they'll say, "Wow, it's very strange. I find it very strange Americans do this or something." You'll find right away, hey, not everybody or nobody feels comfortable going abroad, and so that's part of the learning experience. Make a friend at UNC. We have many international students, and don't be shy.
Yes, don't be shy. I agree. Thank you. Thank you to all of our panelists and to all of you for joining us today. It is always an honor and a pleasure to host fellow Bears and hear about their UNC experience, unique identities, career paths, and industry insights. Throughout the semester, we will be hosting more virtual alumni career panels, and you can learn more by visiting www.unco.edu/alumni/careers. And before we end, we'll have our colleagues over from the Center for Career Readiness who will be sharing some insight to their resources.
Thank you for that. Hi, everyone. My name is Kevon Lakes. I use he, him pronouns. I am currently a graduate assistant at the UNC Center for Career Readiness. I am working on my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. Here at the Center for Career Readiness, we support students while they are current students as well up to 3 years after graduation. Our offers connect UNC Bears to quality on-campus communities and national employers through the Career Tool Handshake. Through Handshake, we host on-campus career fairs each semester. Our next one being March 26th and 27th, and is free to all students and alum. Visit Handshake to register and see which employers will be at the fair. Students and alum are encouraged to schedule an appointment with our career counseling team for resume and cover letter reviews, job, internships, and grad school search support, mock interviews, interviewing tips, and more. We offer drop-in hours as well as job fairs and workshops throughout each semester. Further information on all of this can be found on our website at unco.edu/career. Or you're also welcome to email us at career.readiness@unco.edu. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevon. And now I'm going to ask everybody to unmute themselves. And we're going to do a quick Go Bears on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Go
Go
Bears!
Bears!
And thank you all so much. Have a great evening.